The crash in the void. The stars were quiet. Captain Alara sat alone in the control room of the long-range scout ship Echo 1. Her mission was simple: scan an uncharted sector and return to Earth. She had done missions like this before. But this time, something felt wrong. A sudden beep flashed red on her screen. Warning: unidentified object approaching at high speed. Before Alara could react, the ship shook violently. Alarms screamed. Sparks flew. A bright flash blinded her for a second, and then everything went black. When she opened her eyes, the world was upside down. Smoke filled the air. Her ears rang. Blood dripped from her forehead. The ship had crashed. She crawled out of her seat, calling out, "Dr. Yates? Ramirez? Anyone?" But there was no answer. Bodies. Cold. Still. They were all dead. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to move. The hull was torn. Lights flickered. Gravity felt strange. This wasn't a planet she knew. The sky outside the cracked window was purple, with two suns burning above a dusty desert. Then she heard a sound. A low growl. And footsteps. She turned, sharply pulling out her sidearm, but instead of a beast, she saw him. An alien. He stood tall, almost 7 feet. Skin like smooth gray stone. 4 glowing eyes. He looked strong and wounded. Blood oozed from a long gash on his shoulder. A piece of the ship's wing armor was stuck in his leg. Alara aimed her weapon. "Stop! Don't come closer! The key!" Alien raised his hands slowly. He didn't speak. He just stared at her with calm eyes. Then, slowly, he fell to his knees. She blinked. Was he surrendering? She stepped forward, unsure. He didn't move. Didn't attack. His breathing was heavy. Maybe he was just like her, another survivor. She looked at his uniform. Not human, but also not wild. He must have been part of another ship. She hadn't seen him before, but then again, she hadn't seen every species working with Earth's allies. "Okay. Just don't try anything," she whispered, still holding her gun. He groaned in pain and pointed toward the wreckage. Then, at his leg, it was bleeding badly. Alara slowly lowered her gun. Something inside her said he wasn't a threat. She moved closer, checking his wound. Damn. That's deep. She pulled out a small medical kit and began working. The alien flinched but didn't resist. His skin was tough like thick rubber, but she managed to clean the wound and seal it with a biopatch. He looked at her again and gave a short nod. "You're welcome," she muttered. They didn't understand each other's language, but somehow they understood enough. Survival didn't need many words. Later, Alara dragged what supplies she could from the wreckage. A water purifier, some protein bars, a flare gun. But the communication device was broken. "We're stuck," she said out loud, looking up at the sky. The alien walked beside her, scanning the horizon with his strange blue eyes. The planet was quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no animals. Just sand, rocks, and twisted trees with black leaves. As the twin suns dropped lower, the cold came fast. Alara lit a small fire using scraps from the ship and dry leaves. The alien sat across, from her. He was still watching her, but not in a scary way. More curious. She looked at him and sighed. "Guess we're going to be stuck together for a while." He didn't answer. Just looked at the flames. Then a sharp screech echoed through the desert. Alara jumped to her feet. The alien did too, grabbing a sharp metal rod from the wreck. They stood back to back, scanning the shadows. Something was out there. Big. Fast. The sound faded. Alara's heart pounded. "This planet is not empty." The alien pointed to the sky, then made a sharp hand motion like falling. He then touched his chest and hers, then pointed to the ground. "You're saying we both crashed here?" she asked, more to herself. He nodded slowly. Alara sat back down, shaking. "Great, 2 strangers, 1 dead planet, and something is hunting us." The fire cracked softly between them. They didn't speak. But in that silence, a small bond began to form. Not friends, not yet, but not enemies either. The stars above were bright, cold, and uncaring. But on this strange world, two survivors had found each other. And tomorrow, they would find out what else lived in the dark. Two beings, one fire. The night on the deserted planet was not silent. A sharp wind screamed through the dry canyons. The purple sky had turned black, and the two suns were gone, replaced by a frozen chill that bit through Alara's clothes. Her hands trembled as she tightened the broken panel, acting as a door to their small shelter. The fire was weak. Smoke rose from the scraps of wood and burned wiring. Kale, the alien, sat across the flame, staring into it with unmoving focus. He hadn't spoken since the scream they heard. Not a single word. But his body was tense, every muscle ready. His strange four eyes blinked in rhythm, two at a time. Alara watched him closely. Every time the wind howled, she gripped her weapon. Every flicker of the shadows made her breath pause. It was too quiet outside now. No second scream, no movement. And that was worse. "You think it's gone?" she finally whispered. Kyle didn't understand the words, but he seemed to understand her tone. He shook his head slowly. No, it wasn't gone. Just hiding. Alara sighed and pressed her back to the warm rock wall. Figures. A ghost planet with invisible monsters. What else could go wrong? Kale shifted his leg with a quiet grunt. The wound she patched earlier still looked painful. Blood had dried on the side of his leg, and the patch was already dirty. Alara crawled to her bag and took out more bandages. "I'll redo it," she said, slowly crawling over. Kale looked uncertain. But when she held up the clean patch, he nodded and turned his leg. Alara peeled off the old bandage carefully. "You're lucky I was a field medic before joining command," she muttered. He didn't respond, but he watched her closely as she worked. There was a long scar across his thigh. It wasn't from the crash. No, this was old, jagged, like it had been done with teeth. She paused. "You've fought here before?" Kale tilted his head, then made a quick motion, hand to his chest, then to the sky, then down again. "You returned? This isn't your first time on this planet?" He nodded. Alara's mouth went dry. "Then you knew it wasn't empty." Kyle didn't deny it. Anger sparked inside her. "You let me come here thinking we were alone. You knew there were monsters out here." He didn't respond. Instead, he reached into a side pouch on his torn armor. Slowly, he pulled out something and placed it beside the fire, a small, cracked orb. When he tapped it, it glowed faintly and projected a blurry image. Alara leaned forward. The image showed Kale, fighting. He was younger, his body covered in cuts. Beside him were others like him, running through the same desert, being chased. Some fell, some screamed. The creature that followed them was blurry but huge, sharp, fast. The memory stopped. Alara sat back, stunned. "You lost people here?" Kale nodded. Then he did something that surprised her. He reached across the fire and handed her the orb. Alara hesitated but took it. It felt warm in her palm. A strange gesture of trust. "Thanks," she said softly. A sudden gust of wind nearly killed the fire. She rushed to cover it, her hands shaking. Kyle grabbed a broken metal panel and placed it behind the flame, shielding it from the wind. His fingers brushed hers. For a moment, they just sat close, breathing slowly. Alara looked into his eyes. They glowed faint blue. Not threatening. Not cold. There was something familiar about him now. The loneliness. The fear. The need to connect. Maybe they weren't so different after all. "Kale," she said, pointing at him. He blinked, then pointed at himself. "Kyle." She smiled, then pointed at herself. "Alara." Kyle nodded once. Ra. Close enough. The wind grew stronger. The temperature dropped even more. Ilara wrapped herself in a thin blanket, teeth chattering. Kyle noticed. He stood, walked around the fire, and sat beside her. Without asking, he opened his long coat and wrapped part of it around both of them. Ilara stiffened, but only for a second. Then, she let herself lean in. Their bodies were different, their species even more so. But their fear, their need, their hope, those were the same. Together, beside a dying fire on a dead world, two beings, one human, one alien, shared the smallest warmth in the coldest place, and outside the creature watched them in silence. The Queen's Mark Ilara woke up to the soft sound of breathing, not hers. Kyle was still asleep, sitting beside her with his long coat draped over both of them. His face, usually cold and quiet, looked different in sleep, younger, like someone who had seen too much war but still dreamed of peace. She sat up slowly, trying not to wake him. The fire was nothing but ashes now. The shelter creaked as the morning wind blew through the rocks. Ilara stepped outside. The sky was pale yellow now, and the second sun was already rising. She stretched her sore legs and walked a little, checking for signs of danger. But something strange caught her eye. On her left forearm, a mark. She pulled up her sleeve. The skin glowed faintly. It wasn't a burn or cut. It looked printed. A smooth, round symbol with 3 lines through it. Alien but delicate. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. It hadn't been there yesterday. She rubbed at it hard. Nothing. No pain, no bleeding. Just glowing skin. Back inside the shelter, Kyle had woken. He watched her quietly as she returned. Ilara showed him the mark. Did you do this?" Kale's eyes widened. He stood quickly, walked toward her, and took her arm gently in his hands. He looked at the mark closely, breathing faster. Then, without warning, he knelt. "What are you?" Ilara stepped back, confused. Kale pointed at the symbol, then to his chest. Then he pressed his forehead to her arm. She froze. "What does this mean?" He stood and started drawing in the dirt, 3 lines through a circle. Then, beside it, he drew a symbol of his own, some kind of royal-looking crest, a crown shape. Then he circled them both together. Ilara stared. "Is this a royal mark?" Kale nodded once, very slowly. "You're saying I've been marked by your people?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not just marked." He tapped the symbol, tapped her heart, and then looked her in the eyes. "Chosen." Ilara's mouth went dry. "No. No way, I didn't agree to anything." Kyle stepped back, respectful, but the look in his eyes told her something deeper. He hadn't done this, something else had. That's when she remembered. The scream they heard. The presence outside. Whatever hunted them in the dark, it had touched her. Maybe not physically, but it had left something behind. A mark. "Ilara to Kale," she said slowly, pointing between them. "Connected now." Kale didn't answer. Instead, he sat by the fire remains, picking up a stick and drawing once more. This time he drew a woman. Alone. Then the same woman with the mark, surrounded by tall figures bowing. Then the last drawing, her with a growing belly. Ilara stepped back. "No. No, no, no." Kyle looked away. "You're saying this mark means I'll carry something? Is that what this is about?" He stayed quiet. Ilara sat down hard on the rocky floor. Her thoughts spun. She was just trying to survive this place, to fix the damn comms unit and call for rescue. But now she had a glowing mark. A silent alien who treated her like a queen, and some invisible creature that had touched her in the night. She looked at Kale again. He didn't look like a liar, or someone who wanted to hurt her. But he knew more. Then he said, "I need answers, Kale. Real answers." Kale pointed at the mountain beyond the cliffs. He made a motion, like climbing, then a circular hand sign like a beacon or a shrine. Ilara sighed. "You want me to go there?" He nodded. That night the fire was bigger. Cale had found strange glowing wood from black trees. It burned with a soft blue flame. It gave the shelter a warmth that wasn't just heat. They ate in silence. Dried alien meat, and one protein bar split between them. Later, Ilara sat beside him again. Her arm still glowed faintly under the sleeve. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "I don't know what I've become." Cale turned to her, then without a word placed his hand gently on her arm, over the mark. Not as a claim, as a promise. Attack at the junkyard. The place looked like a graveyard for broken machines. Ilara stood at the edge of a wide canyon, staring. Down at twisted metal, shattered ship parts and rusted alien tech scattered across the rocky ground. The wind carried the smell of burned oil and something worse, decay. "This is the junkyard?" she asked, glancing at Cale. He nodded slowly. His eyes scanned the wreckage with caution. His hand stayed close to the sharp metal spear he carried. Everywhere now. They had walked 2 days to reach this place. Across sharp rocks, strange blue sand, and one night of freezing rain. The glowing mark on Ilara's arm had dimmed a little, but it never vanished. Now, standing in this alien graveyard, she felt something, like pressure in her head, a hum, a presence. Cale pointed toward a broken ship buried halfway in the dirt. Its hull was wide open like a mouth. A symbol above the entrance glowed the same as the mark on Ilara's arm. She swallowed hard. "That ship. It's calling me, isn't it?" Cale gave no answer. They climbed down the steep slope carefully. Ilara's boot slipped once, and Cale caught her by the arm. His touch was firm, warm, familiar. At the bottom, the silence felt heavy. The only sounds were the crunch of metal underfoot and the soft hum coming from that ship. "Stay close," Ilara said. Cale already was. Inside the broken vessel, light flickered from glowing panels. Dead screens blinked with ancient alien symbols. Some looked similar to Cale's drawings. Ilara stepped forward, following the faint pull in her chest. It led her to a chamber deep inside. There, in the center, stood a tall machine, round and pulsing like a living heart made of metal. Cables ran from it into the walls. Symbols glowed along its base. Ilara reached out and touched it. The moment her fingers touched the surface, it woke. Light filled the room. The floor trembled. And a voice, not sound but something inside her head, spoke. "Bearer of the mark, welcome." Ilara gasped and backed away. What is this?" Cale looked alarmed. He didn't hear it, only she did. The voice continued. "You carry the Queen's mark. You have been chosen to bring life, the blood of 2 worlds. The balance must begin again." Ilara shook her head. "No, I didn't agree to anything. I didn't ask for this. Survival chose you." Suddenly, a warning siren rang out from the machine. Bright red symbols lit up. Cale rushed to Ilara and pulled her away from the machine. He was shouting now, words in his language sharp and urgent. Then they heard it. Screams. Not human, not animal. Twisted, sharp, echoing through the canyon outside. Cale ran to the entrance and peeked out. His body stiffened. He turned to her, his voice low and full of fear. "Skarnak." Ilara didn't know the word, but her gut did. Whatever that was, it was coming, and it wanted them. Cale shoved a metal panel over the doorway and motioned for her to hide. But it was too late. A shadow fell over the ship. Something massive landed outside. Dust rose. The ground cracked. Then claws tore through the metal wall. Like paper, Ilara screamed and rolled out of the way. Cale stabbed his spear into the shadow, but the beast slammed him into a wall. It was huge. 8 limbs. Eyes like glowing knives, skin black as oil. It hissed, mouth filled with rows of wet. Teeth. Ilara fired her flare gun. It exploded in light, burning the creature's skin. It roared and turned toward her. She ran toward the machine and slammed her hand on it. "Help me!" she shouted. The machine responded with a burst of light, and a force field exploded outward, knocking the creature back. It shrieked and fled, into the canyon, leaving a trail of smoke and blood. Silence returned. Cale groaned. He was bleeding from the side. Ilara rushed to him. "Stay with me. You're not dying now. Not after all this." Kale looked at her with pain-filled eyes and reached for her hand. He placed it over her stomach. Ilara blinked. "What are you?" She looked down. The mark was glowing again, stronger, and something inside her pulsed. She gasped. "It's started." The queen returns. The sky turned red. It wasn't sunset. It was the dust. A great storm was rising, thick clouds of sand rolling in from the west like a giant wave ready to swallow everything. Ilara stood at the mouth of the ruined ship, her hand pressed tightly against her belly. The glowing mark on her arm now pulsed, like a heartbeat, one that didn't match her own. Behind her, Kale lay weak, his side bleeding. She had wrapped his wound with torn cloth, but it wasn't enough. He needed real medical help and fast, but there was no help coming, only the storm. Ilara looked up at the sky, then back down at the junkyard canyon. The creature, Skarnak as Kale called it, was still out there, injured, but alive, and angry. She could feel it like a weight pressing on her mind, and now, something new. A whisper, not in her ears but inside her head. "Come, rise, become." She staggered back, breathing fast. No, I didn't agree to any of this." Kale groaned softly. He tried to sit up but failed. She rushed to him and knelt. "You have to stay still. You're losing too much blood." Kyle placed his trembling hand on her glowing arm. His voice was weak, but his eyes locked onto hers. "You are not human anymore." The words hit her like ice. Ilara looked away, blinking back fear. "I didn't change. I didn't ask to be marked." Kyle pointed toward her belly. "It chose you. And now, it begins." A deep rumble echoed through the canyon. The ground trembled. Ilara stood up and looked out. From the edge of the junkyard, something was rising. Not a monster, not metal, a temple, stone and glowing crystal, half buried under rust and dirt, now revealed by the movement of the earth. It rose like it had been asleep for centuries, waiting for her. Her mark glowed brighter. Her head throbbed, and the voice returned. "Come, awaken. You are the new queen." "No," she shouted into the empty canyon. "I'm a soldier, a pilot. I'm not anyone's queen." But her legs moved on their own. She walked toward the temple, step by step, as if something inside her was guiding her feet. Kale struggled to rise but fell back. "Ilara, don't go alone." But she couldn't stop. She entered the glowing structure. The walls were covered in symbols, just like her mark. She passed through a narrow corridor until she reached the center. A glowing pool of blue light pulsed at the heart of the room. Above it, a shape floated, a ghostly figure, tall and crowned, her eyes full of stars. Ilara froze. The figure spoke, not in sound but in feeling. A memory, a presence. She wasn't a person anymore, not alive, just an echo. "We were once, like you," the voice said gently. "Flesh and blood, until the war, until extinction." The ghost raised her hand and images filled the room. A galaxy in flames, armies of monsters, a race wiped out. But before the last of them died, they passed their legacy into a seed, a mark. A child, a queen, chosen not by blood, but by spirit. "You all have accepted him," the ghost whispered. "And through you, our blood returns." Ilara shook her head. "But I didn't choose this." The ghost gave a soft smile. "You did, the moment you protected him, the moment you stayed." Tears welled up in Ilara's eyes. She had come to this world as a soldier. Now, she was something else, something more. The pool of light rose and wrapped around her like silk. Her body floated above the ground. Symbols glowed on her skin. Her heartbeat matched the mark. And deep inside her, the child grew stronger. A new life, a new queen. When she opened her eyes, the light faded. She wasn't just Alara anymore. She was Alara of the Mark. She walked back to the broken ship, and Kale saw her. He stared in awe. The glow around her had not faded. Her presence was stronger. Her steps firmer. "Ilara?" he whispered. She smiled softly and knelt beside him. "Still me. Just more." Kale touched her arm and she touched his cheek. The storm howled behind them, but neither moved. Because they knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new legacy. The first trial begins. The temple doors sealed behind her with a deep, final sound like the closing of fate. Ilara stood inside a glowing chamber alone. Kyle was too weak to follow. He had stayed behind, resting near the entrance, whispering her name as she walked away. But something inside Ilara had changed. The mark on her arm now pulsed with light and heat, and she felt a strange strength in her chest. A power not born from training, but from something older. This wasn't just a place of worship. It was a place of trials, and hers had just begun. The room lit up with white fire. Stone walls shifted. Metal platforms rose from the floor. Floating drones circled the ceiling, watching her like silent judges. At the center of the chamber, a tall stone pillar stood. It was covered in carvings, ancient words, forgotten names. Then a voice echoed, soft and cold. "To lead, you must survive. To protect, you must fight. Let the trial of the queen begin." Ilara reached for her belt. Her knife was still there. The flare gun was nearly empty. She clenched her fists. "I don't want to be your queen," she muttered. "But I won't die here either." Without warning, a door opened in the wall ahead and a shape stepped through. It wasn't Skarnak. It was her. A perfect copy. Ilara gasped. Standing in front of her was herself, but different. Taller. Dressed in glowing armor. Eyes glowing bright gold. The mark on her arm burned like fire. The clone stepped forward. "You fear yourself." Ilara raised her blade. "I fear what I might become." The clone moved fast. Too fast. Ilara ducked just as a glowing blade sliced through the air. She rolled across the stone floor and jumped to her feet, breathing hard. This wasn't a test of strength. This was a test of will. "You are weak," the clone said. "You held back. You doubted. You let others die." Ilara shouted back. "I survived. I fought. I protected." She charged the clone and slashed. Sparks flew. The clone blocked with ease and struck back. The two women clashed, steel and light, flesh and fury. Minutes passed. Ilara's arms burned. Her legs shook. The clone never slowed, but then she remembered Kyle, lying injured, waiting for her, trusting her. She couldn't fail him. She couldn't fail their child. With a cry, she dodged a final blow and tackled the clone into the pillar. The carvings lit up. Light burst outward. The clone froze, eyes wide, and shattered into glowing dust. The chamber fell silent again. Ilara stood panting, her body trembling. The voice returned. "You have faced your reflection. You have passed the first trial." The floor opened below her and she fell, down, down, into another chamber. This one was dark, cold. The walls were glass. Inside each panel floated visions, images from her past and from her future. Her ship exploding, her crew dying, Kyle screaming her name, a child with her eyes, and Kale's strength. She reached out to one panel. A vision flickered, her as a queen, standing before thousands, not human, not alien, something between. She pulled her hand away. "This is what you want from me?" The chamber echoed. "No. This is what you already are." Suddenly the vision shattered. Shards of light flew into her skin, sinking in. Her body glowed brighter. Her breath caught. Pain, sharp and strange, ran through her stomach. She collapsed to her knees, clutching her belly, then calm. A single heartbeat echoed in her ears, not hers, her baby's. She smiled through tears. Still with me. The ground shook. A new door opened ahead. Cale appeared, limping. His side was still bleeding, but his eyes were filled with fire. "Ilara!" he called. She rushed to him and caught him as he fell. "You shouldn't be." "Here." Cale looked at her glowing body and nodded. "You finished it?" Ilara shook her head. "No. That was just the first trial." He helped her stand. Together, they looked ahead. A long staircase climbed upward. At the top, golden light spilled out. It wasn't over yet. But for the first time since crashing on this dead world, Ilara felt ready. Our child, our choice. Ilara and Cale stood together at the foot of the staircase. Above them, golden light spilled through the open doorway. The mark on Ilara's arm pulsed steadily now, no longer burning, no longer painful. It was part of her, and so was what grew inside her. Kyle looked up at the long path ahead, his body tired and wounded. But when Ilara placed her hand in his, he straightened. No words were needed. Together, step by step, they climbed. The world behind them, the crashing ship, the monster in the canyon, the cold nights and broken bones, was gone now. Only this moment mattered. When they reached the top, they stepped into a wide, open chamber carved from shining stone. It looked like it had been built by starlight. Symbols ran across the walls like rivers of fire. Strange machines hummed quietly. At the center was a glowing throne, untouched by dust or time. But it wasn't empty. A group stood around it, not soldiers, not monsters. They were keepers. Ancient aliens with robes of living light and faces hidden behind silver masks. None of them spoke, but Ilara felt them inside her head, their thoughts soft like feathers. The queen has returned, but her heart is still uncertain. Ilara stepped forward. "I didn't come here to be queen. You came here to survive, and through that, you were chosen." One of the keepers held out a small orb. Inside it floated a glowing image of her child, still unborn, but alive, healthy. A perfect mix of human and Cale's DNA. A symbol of both species. A bridge. Ilara stared at it, her breath caught in her throat. She looked at Cale. His 4 glowing eyes watched her carefully. He didn't smile, but she could feel his warmth. One of the keepers spoke directly to her now, not in words, but images. If she accepted the throne, the child would be born here in safety. She would become the mother of a new generation, a symbol of peace between 2 long-divided races. Her blood would heal old wounds. Her story would begin a new age, but if she refused, she could leave, return to Earth, hide the mark. Live a quiet life in the shadows of history. The choice was hers. Cale stepped forward, gently touching her back. "You are strong, Ilara. You carried pain. You carried hope. Now, carry your future." Ilara looked at the throne. She imagined herself sitting there, giving orders, wearing a crown of light, but that wasn't her. She wasn't made to rule cities. She was made to protect them. "No," she said. "I don't want your crown." The keepers fell silent. Kyle looked surprised. "I don't want a throne," Ilara continued. "I want a home. A place where our child can grow up free, where no one controls us. Not Earth, not you, just free." The silence stretched. Then the lead keeper floated forward. A long pause. Then a single reply. "Then build it." Ilara blinked. "What?" "Your refusal is your strength. A queen who runs from power is the only one worthy of it. Take your child. Take your mate. The stars are yours." Suddenly the chamber shook. A beam of light opened in the ceiling and a small ship, silver, perfect, unlike any tech Ilara had ever seen, descended from above. It landed gently, the ramp unfolding like petals. A gift. A way out. Cale stared in. "Oh." Ilara took his hand again, and together they walked to the ship. Inside, everything was warm, alive. The ship responded to her touch. The controls pulsed to life. She didn't even need to fly it. The ship understood. As it rose into the sky, Ilara looked down one last time. The temple shrank into the clouds, and then it was gone. She turned to Kale, her hand resting on her stomach. "We're going to raise our child far from war. Somewhere green, somewhere peaceful." Kale leaned forward and gently touched her forehead with his. Their first kiss since the temple. Then they both looked ahead, toward the stars. 2 months later, on a quiet world filled with forests and rivers, a small home stood beside a glowing lake. Birds flew above trees that sang in strange melodies. Inside, Ilara lay on a soft bed, her hand gripping Kale's tightly. Sweat poured from her face. Her breath was fast. The child was coming. Kale stood beside her, whispering soothing words in his own language, trying to stay calm even though his own heart raced. Then, one final cry and silence. Then a new sound filled the room, a baby's first cry, half human, half alien, perfect. Ilara wept with joy as the child was placed in her arms. The mark on her arm glowed brightly once, then faded forever. Kyle sat beside her, holding their child with careful hands. They named her Elani, a word from both their tongues. It meant light from two hearts. 1 year later, legends began to spread across the galaxy of a human woman marked by stars, of an alien warrior who loved her without fear, of a child born from war, destined for peace. They never returned to the worlds they knew, but their story lived on, whispered in secret places, passed between rebels, dreamers, and exiles. Queen who chose love over power, and a child who would one day change everything.